Good day, ladies and gentlemen, all between. Welcome to the Metal Desk. I'm V, and that is Metalhead Fred Banana. What's going on,
It
man?
says it right there. I'm doing great, V. How's everybody out there? Hopefully,
Good.
everyone's having a great day and enjoying a gorgeous fall day here in Chicago.
It's beautiful out.
It is gorgeous out.
So, what we got going on?
Well, tonight here on Metal Desk, we have the veteran New York State metal band, The Rods, are back with a new album filled with crunching chords, powerhouse performances, and songs filled with meaning, depth, and intensity. We have with us tonight the original guitarist, David Rock Feinstein, joining us to talk about the new album, Wild Dogs Unchained, which was released on September 5th on Massacre Records. Feinstein is also the cousin to the late, great heavy metal legend Ronnie James Dio and played with Dio in his band Elf. So we have a lot to cover tonight as we welcome to the Metal Desk, David Feinstein.
David, how are you, sir?
I'm great. I'm great.
Hello, David.
Here, So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Okay, so tell us how the new album came about.
Well, the new album came about, I think it was probably 15 years. The way the years go by now, they're so fast. I think 15 years ago, we had this little, let's get back together and do, a couple of local shows. I started doing solo albums, and Carl gave me a call one day and he said, let me, I heard your latest solo record. It makes me want to play again. I said, well, let's do a couple of local rod shows, for the heck of it. Because back in the day, there was no internet, so we did a local bar shows here in my hometown, and at the time Gary was bass player, and we did one in Ithaca, and people were coming out of the walls, with like albums for us to sign and stuff, which we never realized we had fans like that because there was no internet, and at that point there was. But anyways, so we said, hey, this is great, let's keep doing it. So we never took on another manager or an agent or a booking agency or anything like that. We kind of just did things on our own. People would call us and say, what do you got to have to come to Sweden to play our festival, or our, Spain, or, Brazil or whatever. And we would just say, we need plane tickets, food, transportation, hotel, and we would go and do these because we had gone to a lot of countries that we had never been to in our heyday. So like 99.9% of all of these countries that we went to play these festivals, we were just going for expenses, and once in a while there, we'd put a performance fee on, but not too often. And we were having a great time, and we'd do like maybe 5, 6, 7, 8 every. So, being a songwriter, I start writing songs. And so let's do another album. Okay. So we do an album, then it's like, okay, then we do another album. And then finally it's like, okay, let's do, Carl had made a contact with Massacre Records, and we did an album with them. And then it's like, okay, we did one album. Well, they picked up the option for the second album. I'm going, holy shit. I got to write 10 more songs, it's not that easy to do when you got to, it's like to just sit down and write enough songs for an album, which the thing is for me, I'm always like, putting down, if I hear something that, oh, that's a cool title, if I'm watching a movie or TV or looking for a book or something, I'll put it in my phone. That's a cool title, or a line or a verse, or if I'm sitting down playing guitar and all of a sudden out pops this kind of like, hey, that's a pretty good riff, I'll put it down on my phone. And when it comes time to like me actually, oh gee, I got to write a song, I'll listen to what I have on my phone, and like 99% of it's crap. So if I find a good riff, I'll finish the song. So we were kind of under some pressure to do this last album. So because of that, that's one thing. And also they wanted the completed product by, I think it was a year ago, last August. And because it was supposed to be released, like a long time ago. But anyways, got the songs written, and I wanted to write in a little bit different vein, than I normally, would write songs. Like, the older Rod songs from back in the day were like basically written because of the times, about partying, about girls, about sex, drugs, and rock and roll.
Right.
I wanted to at this time, because of the influence of Ronnie and everything like that, and his death, and me spending, I got to spend a lot of time with him in the last 10 years. It was like, I wanted to write some songs that were more serious, and some songs that were like, more of like what I felt that was going on in the world at the time. And so anyways, we got the songs done, we got everything done, and that's how this album came about. And we were ready, we were on deadline. And then the record label had some internal problems with, you know the whole story probably. I don't know the whole story, but I know they had some internal problems
right.
that pushed the release date back, which in turn kind of screwed us up a little, because after rushing to get everything done, we actually turned down some offers to play some shows this last summer because we wanted the time to work on the album. And in turn, we really had the time to do it if we wanted to. But that's long story short on how this album came about.
So a lot of people, we talk to people, often some people like the deadline. Others, they don't want anything at all. They'll, here's our finished product. Now that you've written both ways, do you prefer one over the other?
Not really. I mean, I always have songs, in the back of my head. I'm always working on something, and if somebody says, oh, gee, I need a song tomorrow. I don't know if I could have it tomorrow, but, I've always got some ideas going where I can come up with a song pretty quickly, depending on, what vein it's in. So, yeah, I don't have a preference, really.
So let's go back to the beginning. So you guys get signed as Elf. So tell us that whole story.
Okay.
Because that's major rock and roll history, right?
Okay. How far back do you want me to go? You want me to go back before Elf?
Yeah.
Or do you okay. Because I can elaborate on a lot of these things, like, Ronnie, I started out in a rock band as a drummer, believe it or not. I started playing trumpet when I was 7 because Ronnie played trumpet. Ronnie was like 5 years older than me, and at the all through the teenage years, like Ronnie's band, Ronnie Dio and the Prophets. It was the band, and there were a lot of musicians locally that lived in Cortland, and we all wanted to be like his band, because his band was great. And in those days, it was like you played 4 sets a night of cover material, 40 minutes on, 20 minutes off. We played a lot of songs. So, there was a lot to it. So when I became, like 13, 14 years old, my best friend at the time was playing guitar, and we want to form a band, Well, I play trumpet, it's not going to happen in a rock band. So I took up playing the drums, and really never took any lessons. I just played drums, and my parents rented me a set, and then I ended up buying a set, and I had this band back then in the day, and I did actually sit in on drums with Ronnie's band a couple of times. So Ronnie knew I could play drums. Yeah. So one night, there was this bar in Cortland at the time. I think it was called Domino's, and they had bands during the week. And Ronnie's band was Ronnie Dio and the Prophets was playing. They were playing, and on one of the breaks, Ronnie and I were talking. He goes, "You know how to play guitar, don't you?" Well, I did. Because my best friend in my band was a guitar player. He would show me a couple chords. We'd hang out, So sure. Ronnie, you know how to play guitar, don't you? And I said, yeah, I can play guitar. I know like 3 chords on the guitar. That's it, 3 chords. So that's all you need. I said, he said, well, if you want to come in the band he had 2 guitar players. He said, the rhythm guitar player, Dick, is leaving. If you want to come in as a rhythm guitar player, we'd love to have you come in. I said, great. I love that, and I really was, like blew me away. They asked me to do that. And he said, Gary, the drummer, was getting called, he had to go for his draft physical because back then the Vietnamese War was going on. He said, if he has to leave, you could come in as the drummer or the rhythm guitar player. Well, I was hoping Gary wouldn't have to leave because I really wanted to go in as a guitar player. You know, for me, it felt like I could be a little bit more creative, you know?
Yeah.
So anyways, and plus the fact that we were, you know, everybody in the front line was about the same height, you know, like 5'2". So anyways, Gary ended up failing his draft physical, so he stayed, and I came on, and Dick, the rhythm guitar player, stayed on for 2 or 3 months because I had to learn like 4 sets of cover material, you know.
Right. That's a
And
lot.
like I said, when Ronnie asked me to join the band, I know like 3 chords. So anyways, Dick stayed on, and um, when I could play a half a set, I'd sit in. When I could play a whole set, when I got to I could play all 4 sets, then Dick was gone, and I was the official rhythm guitar player, and that was Ronnie Dio and the Prophets. So then we switched, you know, names got changed from that to the Electric Elves, then the Elves, and we had at the time that the band was the Elves, we took Doug Thaler into the band, who eventually later on went to manage Motley Crue.
Yeah.
As a keyboard player and a second guitar player. He couldn't play keyboards. You know, it was like a 2-finger thing. But we took him in as a keyboard player because we took him in the band because, you know, he was a second guitar player, and actually it was another voice because we did a lot of harmonies, you know, and in that band, you know, we could learn any song because of Ronnie's capabilities. I mean, there was nobody. I mean, when an album came out, when a Beatles album came out, we learned the whole. You know, because Ronnie could sing the whole album, you know.
How loud was Ron in the room?
How loud?
Like how loud? Like was he a very loud singer?
Oh yeah, yeah. He was a very loud singer. Yeah, he was just capable of singing anything. You know, I mean, he could have been another Tom Jones or an Engelbert Humphrey if he had went that route. You know, because actually we were doing cover songs. We did songs like that. You know, we did songs like Delilah, you know, and he sang songs like Unbelievable and The Way of Love. So anyways, when Doug was in the band, you know, we played in Connecticut for a week, someplace at this club, and we had a car accident. You know, we're all in a van with our equipment, and a drunk driver ran into us head on, actually killed the other Nicky, who was our other guitar player, the lead player, died. And Ronnie and I both got hurt pretty bad. Ronnie hit the windshield. He has, you know, over 100 stitches in his scalp, where his whole scalp was torn back.
Holy moly.
He got, you know, broken leg. I got cut in the lip. I got cut here in the face. Doug Thaler permanently, you know, like he's still probably walks with a limp. I mean, he's got his leg crushed in the front. So it was a real bad thing. Ronnie and I woke up in Winstead, Connecticut in a hospital in beds next to each other, you know, and it's like, when we found out Nicky died, we started crying and, the whole thing. And, we looked at each other at one point and we said, are we going to put this thing back together? And we both said, yes, we are. We're going to do it, And we both looked like zombies. I mean, Ronnie's head was shaved. We were like, black and blue from head to toe.
Right.
We were in the hospital for about a week, and then we ended up coming back to Cortland, and the van was destroyed. All our equipment was destroyed. We put the band back together. And so it was me, Ronnie, and Gary, the original drummer. He didn't get hurt too bad in the accident. So we figured, well, we need a fourth person. Doug, not in the band anymore. And we asked this guy, Mike Sewell, Mickey Lee, who just got out of the service. And he was in another band, but he was a piano player. Okay. And we asked him to join the band. So it was the four of us. And that's when it became ELF, ELF. So at that point in time, we started, writing songs. Now, Ronnie, and before that, we had singles out, with Ronnie Dio and the Prophets, where Ronnie, and they were mostly very commercial, crooner type, songs. You probably heard them. So we started writing songs. And this is when things were happening with, like, all of a sudden there's Jimi Hendrix, there's Deep Purple, there's, all these bands were coming from England, from England. And those were the times, So we started writing songs. and we were playing in Connecticut quite a bit. And we became friends with this we call him a kid now. He's, you know, obviously I don't know how old he is now, but at the time he was a kid. And Bruce Payne, and he loved the band so much, hanging out with the band, that he would go out to different places, to clubs and schools, and try to book us. You know, because he just wanted us to come there so he could hang out with us. You know. And so he started doing that, and we were going to Connecticut and Massachusetts a lot, you know. So one of the times we were there, he said, "Geez, I got some bad news." I go, and we said, "What is it?" And he said, "Well, I took a job with this company in New York called ATI, which was at the time one of the biggest booking agencies there were." You know, and said, "That's not bad news. That's a good news," you know. Because he figured, I'm not going to be around here to like, you know, pound on doors to get you guys jobs. But, you know, he's working now in New York for one of the biggest companies, you know. So we thought, this is really good. This is really great.
Yeah, they'll take your call.
Yeah. So anyways, he got, through that job, he got us an audition with Clive Davis.
Wow.
At Columbia at the time. To get us an audition with Clive in New York City. So it's great, you know. So we went to this rehearsal hall in New York. It was a big room. We set up. There was some folding chairs along the wall, and Clive came in with, you know, a couple of people from his office that sat with him. And then by chance, Roger Glover and Ian Pace, you know, from Deep Purple, happened to come in because they were getting interested in producing a band. So we were auditioning for them too, which we didn't really realize it at the time. So anyways, we played like 4 or 5 of our original songs that we had written that ended up on the first album. And then again, everybody got up and left. Never said anything, you know. So the next day we found out that Clive, you know, the record company wanted to sign us, and Roger and Ian wanted to produce us, you know. So shortly after that, we were on our way to, we recorded that first album in Atlanta, Georgia, Studio One, which I think at the time was owned by the Atlanta Rhythm section. I'm not sure, but it was a pretty well-known studio, and that's where Roger and Ian wanted to record. So we went down there for a week. We recorded the album. And the album came out on the subsidiary of Columbia, which I think might have been Decca. I'm not sure, I can't remember, or Epic, whatever. And then all of a sudden, we're on tour with Deep Purple. You know, I mean, we went from playing, you know, clubs basically to being, you know, at the time, Deep Purple was the biggest band in the world. You
Absolutely.
Know, they were filling arenas. And not only that, you know, we were huge fans of Deep Purple, you know, and I idolized Richie Blackmore. He was one of my people that influenced me on the guitar, you know. So it was like such a big deal, you know, for us to play, you know, to play arenas, opening up for Deep Purple, you know. I don't even know what your original question was. I forgot. You know, I take off on these tangents. Sometimes
that's all right. No, we were talking about the beginning, and you know, the beginning of Elf, and then you went to the, you know.
You know, I like to elaborate and tell the whole story, especially the people that really want to hear it. You know, but anyway.
Absolutely.
So, you know, I was a huge fan of Richie's, and all those guys it was a magical band, really. Purple. I mean, they didn't really hang out together like off stage that much. I mean, Roger and Ian did, you know, but otherwise they kind of went their own ways. But when they were on stage, it was magical. You know, they were just an incredible band. I mean, look at the players, you know, they were all, I mean,
we talk about Deep Purple all the time, and how, like, as time goes on, they're almost becoming now underrated. And in my mind, like the original Sabbath, with how that's a huge thing to me, it's Deep Purple,
you know,
rather than Sabbath.
World now, because back then bands got up and they counted 1, 2, 3, 4 and played. It wasn't like, you know, especially when you're talking about recording where the drums are done here and everything was digital. But anyways, the band was just amazing, you know. So like the first night of the first tour, you know, I wanted to meet Richie really bad, you know, because I heard rumors about, oh, Richie is, you know, he'll throw bands off the tour because he doesn't like the guitar player, he doesn't like this, he doesn't like that, you know. And everybody, you know, everybody, myself included, and everybody in the band that I'm in with the Rods, everybody has their own little idiosyncrasies, you know,
Of
and
course.
you have to deal with them. It's not always easy to get along with people. So,
Right.
anyways, I asked one of the crew when they were setting up. I said, "Where's Richie's dressing room?" Because they all had their own dressing rooms. And I said, "Why?" They said, "I said I want to meet him." It was, "Oh, no, you can't do that. You can't bother him. You can't, you know." And they all discouraged me to do that. But I found out where his dressing room was, and I went I went to the door. I knocked on the door, you know, and Richie answered the door, and I could see candles burning in the background. You know, it was like so cool. I mean, I was so, you know, like out of it because, you know, like I was such an idol. It was like such a fan, you know.
Yeah.
So I said, so he answered the door, and I introduced myself, you know, and said I was in the band that's opening up, and I told him, I said, I just want to ask you one question, you know. And he said, well, what is that? And I said, I want to know who your favorite guitar player is. And he said, Jeff Beck is my favorite guitar player. And I said, you know what? He's my favorite guitar player too, and that's the truth.
Yeah.
And I said, but you're my second best favorite guitar player, you know. So I mean, we would have got along, the band and Deep Purple and all those guys, we would have gotten along fine anyways, because we were easy to get along with guys, you know. I mean,
Right.
we were a band that was, you know, a band that didn't say, let's form a band so we can be rock stars and make a lot of money. We
You
were a
wanted to
band
play.
that just wanted to do it for the love of doing it, you know.
Right.
We didn't grow our hair because we thought, well, let's look cool. We grew it because we wanted to, you know.
Yeah.
So, anyways, those years of touring with Deep Purple were just, they were fantastic, and, you know, and that was the beginning of the Elf band, pretty much.
Yeah, and it had to be great to meet one of your idols, Richie, like that, because I never had the chance to meet Ronnie, but I've
Mm-hmm.
heard nothing but incredible stories at how cool he was and how good he was to his fans. And I think Lizzie Hale told a story on the Metal Show once when she was opening for Ronnie, and she
Mm-hmm.
said Ronnie went up to everybody, the opening band, and everybody thanked them all personally and stuff. And she said to him how nice he was, and I guess she said Ronnie put his finger up and said, "Let me tell you something." She goes, "When Ronnie James Dio puts his finger up, you listen." And he said, "Every fan you meet, you're going to meet a million fans, but everyone that meets you, it's their first time meeting you, and it's going to mean
Mm-hmm.
something to them. So be
Right.
nice to them, treat them like that." And I love that story because that's being a fanboy and going to a ton of concerts and meet and greets. I can't tell you how great it is when you meet these guys that you've been watching for 40 years and you get to meet them and
Yeah,
they're just so nice and
yeah.
just regular down to earth guys. It really
Well,
makes a big difference.
that's the way Ronnie was. I mean, he lived for the fans. I mean, I can tell you, you know, and I know that from being around him a lot. You know, he was really dedicated. He has a brilliant mind. Obviously, you know, he's just one of a kind person. You know, and the fans meant so much to him, but because he knew that it was the fans that, you know, that's what it's all about. You know, it's about
Yeah.
the fans. And I can tell you one little story. I mean, there's many stories I can tell, but I always remembered this one when the Dio band was out and they were doing the show in New York City. I think it was the Roseland Ballroom or something like that.
Okay.
I walked into the dressing room and this very strong smell of eucalyptus like hit me in the face. I mean, the whole room was just like eucalyptus. And over in the corner, Ronnie was sitting at a table and he had his face into the steamer, you know, with eucalyptus coming up, you know. And I went over, I go, what's wrong? He goes, oh, I'm so sick. I can't breathe. I'm so stuffed up. I can't, you know, this is awful. I feel awful, you know. And I said, well, geez, you know, why didn't you cancel the show? he said, I would never cancel a show for the fans or the promoters unless I absolutely had to. That's what he said. So I can remember, I'm pretty sure that Craig Goldie and I helped Ronnie put his boots on before he even could walk down to the stage. And, you know, the stage, there was a set of wooden steps that went down to the stage. So it was time for them to go on. And they went down and played a 2-hour set. And Ronnie sang like there was nothing wrong. I mean, and the other thing is that Ronnie never warmed up either. He never warmed
that
up.
blows me away.
Back in the deal, he never warmed up. Like you never heard him backstage, you know, la 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 la, you know, never warmed up.
Right.
He sang perfectly, never out of tune. Everything was perfect, you know. It was just one of a kind. So after that show, we go out to the bus, and Ronnie ends up standing outside for over an hour, signing autographs for every fan right up to the last one. Finally comes on the bus, and I'm sitting there, and he goes, Rock, I got to go lay down. I said, Jesus, Ronnie, I don't know how you sound like you should have laid down like 4 hours ago. I mean, but that's the way he was. He was dedicated to the fans. The other thing is like when you met him and you said, this is my wife, Jane. These are my 2 kids, Alex and, you know, Eileen. You know, if you saw him 2 years later or 3 years later with your family, he would remember everyone's name.
That's amazing. I know a few people like that, and it's very.
He remember everyone's name. You know, it's just incredible. You know, it really is. You know, I just learned so much from him. And, you know, when I first got in the band, you know, the Prophets, you know, those guys were 5 years older than me. So it was like, you know, I was the little guy, the young guy that, you know, was taking all this in, you know, from these guys, you know, and it just was such an experience for me to do that it's just something that you could never explain, you know, for me, but it was just great. It was great.
And what you said about him signing for every fan, as one thing about his signatures, he's got a beautiful signature. He writes out Ronnie James. Yeah. I'm also an autograph collector, and I tell you now, it's scribble from everybody. And I go, how can you even tell whose signature that is? Now let me ask you this question, David. Did you hear about the Dio 3D show several years ago with Ronnie?
Oh, he played
the hologram show.
He played with the hologram, Ronnie.
Oh, you did. You did. Okay, because I saw that at our local theater a handful of years ago. I wonder if you were in that then, because Greg Goldie was there. Were you there then? Carter Theater in St. Charles, Illinois.
Even where it was. It was somewhere in the
you had mentioned when you were talking about it, like you hear Ronnie's voice over the speakers cranking, and then you had to get in front of the technology what was that feeling like to look over and see your cousin, your buddy, your bandmate who's not here there?
You mean with the hologram?
Yeah, that must have been very bizarre.
Yeah, it was a strange thing, and it was interesting to me to see how most of the fans in the crowd would react to that, you know, because they're hearing it had to be synced up with actual Ronnie's you know, live performance.
Yes.
So you're hearing Ronnie's voice singing the actual song with the band playing live along with them. It was kind of weird, you know. I guess because we know now that it really didn't catch on that well, because, you know, obviously they'd still be out doing it, but it was strange, you know. It was great to hear his voice. I you know, when I listen to him sing now, tears still come to my eyes, you know, when I listen, because there's so much there, and there was so much between the two of us. There was just some kind of magnetism, you know, there. I don't know what you want to call it, but yeah, it was, you know, I love listening to him sing. I love listening to it with the voice. Another story I can tell you about him. You know, I saw a lot of Ronnie the last 10 years of his life, and we talked about doing an Elf reunion type of album, you know, where he would actually play bass, because, you know, originally in Elf, he played bass.
Bass player,
So
yeah.
he was looking for, he said, I'll play bass again. We'll do it. Like, so when I would go visit him in California, you know, we at certain times of the day, we'd go down in the basement. He had a little studio there, and we'd work on material and stuff. But his schedule was always so busy. He was on tour, and I lived 3,000 miles away. So it was like, you know, we never really, it took a while, but we planned to do that. And also during that time, that his parents were still living here in Cortland, and they both got sick at different times. So he was making a lot of trips back here.
Yeah.
And he talked about, you know, he knew that I was doing Rod's records and I was doing solo records. He said, I'll sing on one of your records. He said, I'll sing a song on one of your solo records or one of the Rod's records or whatever, you know, if you want, you know, when I'm up here. I said, that's great, you know. And it's funny because I wrote Metal Will Never Die like at least 2 years before he passed away.
Yeah.
And at the time, probably around the same time, Carl wrote a song called The Code, which neither one of those songs were really Rod's songs. You know, we both felt that The Code definitely needed a singer. Not, you know, I'm not really a singer. I'm more of a stylist or somebody that I never really even wanted to be the singer in the band, but, you know, it just turned out, you know, then we became the American Motorhead. But anyways, you know, when I told Carl, I said, Ronnie wants to sing a song or two, you know, when he comes up here. And I said, I think that, you know, these two songs, The Code and Metal Will Never Die, are two songs, perfect songs for him, you know, like, because they really, to do the songs justice, he really needed a good, you know, singer. Ronnie was beyond good. But anyways, so Ronnie called one time. He said, I'm coming up next week. He said, I'm going to be there for an extra day. He said, I could sing a song or two if you want. I said, yeah, that'd be great, you know. So, you know, I remember picking him up at the airport, and he came in, and we spent some time that night, you know, and he had a couple of beers and stuff like that. So I had a boom box, and I had a cassette tape that I did, you know, like a rough vocal of these two songs, you know, that he was going to sing the next day. So I said, here, take this boombox back to the hotel with this cassette tape, and you know, at least you can familiarize yourself with, you know, the songs a little bit.
Yeah. So
the next day he comes here, and actually recorded it right here in this room that I'm in now. And it's not a studio anymore, but it's just the same room.
Yeah.
So he comes in, and I said, "Now, did you listen to the cassette last night at the hotel?" And he goes, "No." He goes, "I was tired when I got back. I didn't feel like listening to it." I said, "Okay, all right, fine." Now I know because I recorded with Ronnie before. I knew his capabilities. I knew what it was going to be like. I told Carl days before. I said, you know, when you're going to be there, I said, but you're not going to believe, you know, the way Ronnie records. I said, you've produced other bands, you know, you've worked with other singers, good singers, you know, it's like, you know, oh, do another take, this wasn't right, blah, blah, blah. I said, but you're not going to, Ronnie's not like that. You know, I think Carl, at first, you know, he didn't think too much of it, you know, he didn't realize it.
Yeah.
So Ronnie comes in, and he takes the boom box into, like, we have a little vocal booth, takes the boom box in there with the cassette, and we start the first song, and he listens. He goes, let me listen to the first verse. So he listened to the first verse of the song, and then he goes, okay, let's take it, and he sings it like world class in his style, you know, and it's like unbelievable, you know. So, you know, and that's the way he did both songs. He just listened to the boom box, the verse, and sang it in his style, and it was unbelievable, you know. So Carl afterwards said to me, he said, you know, you told me that the way Ronnie is. He said, I couldn't believe it at first. He said, but now after seeing this, he said, it just blows my mind, you know. Everything is perfect. And, so, everything on key, everything cool, everything great, So, he did the 2 songs. They came out later, like actually, probably, well, they came out after he passed away. So it was like at least 2 years later.
Yeah.
And another story along with that, this Win Davis, who has a studio in Redondo Beach, that worked with Ronnie a lot on a lot of his albums, and I went down there to master actually one of the albums, I think my solo album that Ronnie did sing on. And Ronnie was sick during that time, but he demanded, he said, I'm going. I said, listen, you don't have to go, I can go on my own. He goes, no, I want you to go. I want you to meet Win Davis. I want you to, I want you to show you the studio and the whole deal, and he went. But Win told me afterwards, he said, the first time that Ronnie came into his studio with probably the Dio band for one of the albums,
Yeah.
And Ronnie was in the vocal booth, and he did a verse or whatever, and Win happened to say to him, well, maybe you want to do another take, and Ronnie said back to him, I'll tell you when I want to do another take, because every take he did was perfect, and the only reason Ronnie would do another take is if he wanted to try something a little different, because it was always on key. Every take was, a keeper take was great. And Win said after that, I never said another word to him about, like doing another take, because he never really needed to do another take. He was just that good. Was a special person. So anyways, there's a couple stories that were interesting, about how Ronnie was and what his talents were, were. They were just beyond.
Yeah, of course, we all, look up to Ronnie, and I'm an abstract artist, so I just wanted to show you my tribute to your cousin Ron.
That's cool.
That's
cool. That's
right?
Great. Yeah, very
we
cool.
got Eddie Van Halen there.
Yeah, that's nice.
Ronnie, I mean, his voice, no one is even close.
No.
So
I listened
unique.
That was that tribute album that came out, with you had all great singers, on that, but they all did Dio songs, and in fact, Rob Halford is, a great singer, is one of my favorites, and a good person. We did a lot of Judas Priest dates with them.
Yeah.
And all the singers that were on that album that did Dio songs, for me personally, and I'm not putting down those singers because all great singers, but not one of them, did what, Dio did with those songs,
Exactly.
I can't listen to those songs with another singer singing them, know? So, yeah,
like
he was.
Someone had brought up a couple weeks ago, we had Justin Urban from Culvera and Lost Psychonaut, and he was like, man, he goes, just check out everyone always gave, kind of discounted Ozzy vocals ability. A lot of people did. I never understood that, but everyone who tried to sing Ozzy's song, they couldn't do it.
No, he was a stylist, just like Lemmy,
right.
And you don't have to be an opera singer. You don't have to have all the capabilities. No. It's just like every guitar player doesn't need to be an Eddie Van Halen.
Absolutely.
Everybody has their own unique sound, their own unique style that fits with, whatever music they're doing. You can't another Motorhead without Lemmy.
No.
Impossible. So yeah, I mean, it's wrong to criticize anybody really, or any kind of person playing an instrument. For me on guitar, I can't play a scale. I couldn't play a scale to save my life. I'm not interested in that. I grew up in an era where I was a self-taught guitar player that had that idolized guys like Jeff Beck, Ritchie Blackmore, Jimi Hendrix. They're blues-based guitar players, and that's what my style too, because that's what I liked. But you can't criticize. Well, you shouldn't. I mean, people do, but you really shouldn't criticize singers or guitar players or drummers or anybody. Everybody's their own thing, like it or not.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
The way,
no one's looking to recreate, but also that's also how people, I think, come to also a different level of appreciation for the original artist. And they're like, wow, all these guys, and they still can't even come close to.
At the end of the, usually every night, like, I have a restaurant bar restaurant in town, but I'm there every night to close up. And we play the 70s station, for music in the back. So most of the time during the night, you really can't hear much because there's people in there and stuff. But at the end of the night, when you're just sitting around waiting for maybe for the dishwasher to get done, and you can really hear the music, And I just think I listen to this music that's recorded in the 70s.
Yeah.
There's no auto tune.
Right.
There's no digital. Those musicians recorded the way we recorded when we started. They went into a studio. Everything was blocked off. They counted the song off, and they played the song. And the vocals were overdubbed, and the leads were overdubbed, whatever.
And bouncing off of 4 tracks.
Right. Yeah. Usually 4 tracks. So when I listen to those songs, I think some of it just sounds so great. And they were really recorded like in that way. Like 4-track, 8-track, bouncing down. All these tracks to other 1 track, so you can put it together, just like Boston did in the early days. So when I listen to those songs, I have so much appreciation for like the musicians, the producers, the arrangers, to do that without the technology that we have today.
Yeah.
So
it's very interesting that you brought up the music, like listening to and how people react to it. So I worked at a dispensary for marijuana products, right? And a lot of people they'd put the rap music on. I'm like, the customers are agitated. Our customer base is 40 to 65 mostly.
Yeah.
And that's not what they grew. I go put Motown on. The second you put Motown on, everyone starts to relax. Everyone starts bobbing their head and move. And it's really amazing. Obviously it's musicianship, songwriting skills, analog equipment, analog performance.
And there's different times
too perfect.
Music,
Yeah.
So, maybe in a different location, a different situation,
right?
The rap music is appropriate for that, So
yeah, exactly. I said, read your customer base, like, don't put something on because you want to hear it. It's not about you.
Right. That's right.
And also one of the other things I wanted to get into. Okay, so you get off the road with Deep Purple as Elf, Blackmore leaves and starts Rainbow. And majority of the band, correct, from Elf goes and basically becomes Rainbow.
Yeah. Okay, so I needed a break.
Sure.
I had done nothing in my life at that time, from being a 12, 13 years old to opening up for Deep Purple. I needed a break from it.
Yeah.
I never done anything else in my life. So I didn't. When I, said to Ronnie, I needed to not play. I need to quit for a while. I didn't mean to quit forever.
Right.
I only need some time, whether it was a month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever.
Right.
Which when I think of that, it wasn't fair to them. And I still feel bad about the fact that I did that, because I left those guys in the lurch, and but it's the way I felt at the time. So, they all moved off to California, and we already had a very tight association with all the guys in Deep Purple.
Yeah.
So it was, over time, when I saw that Richie was leaving Deep Purple and forming Rainbow, and basically took the whole Elf band, I knew that even if I was in the band back then, I wouldn't have been taken. I was the guitar player. Yeah. And the question that I always think about that will never be answered, it's impossible to be answered, is if I had gone to California with the band, the Elf Band, would Ronnie have would we have had enough success so that we could have continued on as Elf rather
Right.
than Ronnie and the Elf Band going with Richie? You know,
Right.
that's a question that can't be answered. Also, I could never understand why someone, meaning Richie, would leave a band that's the biggest band in the world to form another band. And of course, it's happened before. It's happened
Yeah.
with Van Halen. You
Yep.
know, big band in the world, somebody leaves, it's different. Why do people do that? You know, so, you know, for me, it's hard and still hard to understand why. I guess probably
Is it
egos.
ego? Is it the challenge of trying to get to the peak again?
You know,
You
it
know,
is. I don't know what it is, but I think it's crazy, you know, that somebody do that. But maybe if you don't get along with somebody, you can't get
yeah.
along with somebody, or maybe it's money is involved, maybe egos are involved. But whatever it
Yeah, and
was,
Yeah.
Richie,
usually yeah, usually like it's a creative clashing, right? I mean, maybe Richie wanted to go a little different direction, although he really didn't with Rainbow, but maybe he felt he needed to do something, or like I'm sure
whatever
ego's in there.
he had his reasons, just like I had my reason to leave for a couple
Yeah,
months.
right.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, you know, you can't put him down for that. But um, the combination of Ronnie and Richie. Now I know that like shortly after the original Rainbow Band, you know, Richie fired, got rid of, you know, they quit, whatever. Um, you know, he switched personnel, you know, except for Ronnie did stay on a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Uh, Richie and Ronnie, because their mindset was pretty much the same as far as the medieval thing, you know,
Right.
they came up with some great songs, you know.
Absolutely.
And I think that if Ronnie had stayed, if they had stayed together, there would have been more great songs. So, um, but that was the only good thing I saw about that whole matchup. I don't know how things uh, ended with Richie and Ronnie. You know,
Yeah.
with that whole, you know, unless you're in the inner circle,
Yeah. You know,
I don't really know. I only know what you hear secondhandedly, but I don't know how that whole thing ended. But it was they did. Rainbow came up with some great songs. You know, period.
absolutely.
You know, I think that one of the things that I heard, whether it's true or not, I don't know, that Richie wanted. They were, you know, they were very popular overseas in other countries, but they weren't that popular in the United States. And Richie wanted a commercial hit in the U.S. And Ronnie didn't want that. You know, he
Right.
wasn't going to sing love and this and that and the other. So, you know, I think that might have been one of the reasons why he just said, "I'm not singing that song." You know, period. You know,
Right.
so, but Richie did get another singer, and they did have a hit in the United States, and that was
Since you've
it. So,
been gone. Yeah.
and
Absolutely. You have
so
to
you
let
know,
artists be artists, you
yeah,
know?
yeah, and you know, the Black Sabbath thing was a great thing. I mean, Black Sabbath was a great band with Ozzy. Black Sabbath was a different band with Ronnie. You
Totally,
know,
just like Van Halen.
yeah,
Like, I'm not a
yeah,
big Black Sabbath Ozzy fan, but I'm a huge Black Sabbath Ronnie fan.
yeah,
Just
it's a
totally different band.
different world, different world. You know,
Yeah.
great song and everything. So, you know, I'm just happy that you know Ronnie went on to you know to write some of the greatest songs in rock history and to
Absolutely.
be what he turned out to be. You know, and I mean, I'm sad about the fact that he had to die, but
Right.
I don't know.
But,
Anyways,
talking about him and telling stories keeps him alive,
yeah,
you know? People wanna hear this
yeah,
stuff, they know you're a relative. It's different when blood plays together.
yeah,
We've seen it in many bands. When blood plays together, it's a whole different thing.
yeah. There was definitely some kind of magnetism, no matter where we were in a room in his house or anywhere. You know, there was when him and I were together somewhere. There was
Yeah.
something. I mean, the thing is, we looked so much alike, with
Yeah.
the hair, beards, and the same height, pretty much, and everything. It's like people would, you know, take me for Ronnie, and then take Ronnie for me, and say, call, and
Right.
it was more like a joke than anything. But there was just a magnetism there. He was like my brother, and just
Yeah.
have a strong attachment to each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, how excited are you now that the album's out and people finally get to hear it?
I'm excited about it because there's 2 or 3 songs on this album that are like different songs for me to write, and I wrote those songs because of my feelings.
Mm-hmm.
Tears for the Innocent. Obviously, when you read the lyrics or listen to the lyrics, you can tell what the song's about.
Yeah,
That
I'm sorry, David. I was gonna mention that I saw a review on the album, and it stated that this is a bit more mature album for you guys than the previous stuff. And looking at your songs, you probably would agree with that statement. Mirror, Mirror is a song about looking at yourself. Tears for the Innocent is a song about a senseless war. World on Fire,
Yeah,
inspired by the state that our world is right now. Make Me a
Mhm.
Believer, a song about perseverance. So it sounds like there's a lot of insight and depth into these songs.
Yeah, there is, and I wanted, people to, I wanted whether people accept it or like it or not, and say, "Oh, that's not really a Rods," that's not really the Rods. I don't care. It's like I don't care.
You are
That's
the rock. What are you talking
that's
about?
me. That's me. That's the way I feel. That's
Yeah.
what I wanted to write. And I'm proud of those songs. And that's just the way it is. It's just like anything. Take it or leave it. I don't care. It doesn't matter. I'm happy with it, and that's what I'm concerned with. Is that I'm happy with those songs because they're different, and they express my feelings, not just my feelings, but I think a lot of feelings for people all over the world.
Yeah.
So it's hard because when it comes to like and I know that like Ronnie, when I wrote a song, back in the day, it was a different world, obviously, but you could write a song about anything in any way, and you knew Ronnie could sing it in a world class way. It didn't matter. When I had to write songs for the Rods, it's like I need to write a song that first of all, we can play live as a 3-piece band,
Mhm.
and it can be sung by a singer that's not really a singer. It's more like so it's like we had to writing was limited,
Yeah.
but at this stage of the game, I wanted to be like more like Ronnie. I wanted to write about something that was real and something that you could really, get your teeth into and listen to it and get something from it,
Yeah.
rather than just writing about what times the party start, kind of
Right.
thing.
Yeah, yeah. And
So,
that's what
I hope, I'm proud of the album. I hope that, people like it for that, or like it for the other songs that are on there that are more Rod style.
Yeah.
For what reason, I'm curious. I'm excited about it, but I'm also curious to see what the reaction is. And so far, the reaction has been very positive on both ends of it.
It's always been interesting to me, fans, how rigid they are sometimes. They're like, "Oh, that's not a." How do you know that's not a?
Yeah.
What do you mean that's
Yeah.
not a Rod song? The main songwriter from the Rods wrote that song for the Rods album or Metallica or whoever. It's like
The thing is,
they
the thing
almost
is,
don't give the artist
yeah,
permission to grow.
yeah. The thing is, it might not be right for that one person, but it
Right.
might be right for hundreds of other people.
Right.
So it is what it is. It's just there. I don't know. We'll just have to wait and see what happens.
Yeah, that's like we never have anyone on where we don't like the music because it's not fair because we like the my song that I can't stand out of anything, maybe someone's favorite album.
Oh, I know
You know,
that. That's true
yeah,
because there's songs that we've done on albums that you know, they're like the last song on the album. They're like, oh, that's a piece of crap. You know, like we need it for a filler. We need 10 songs. So this is going to be the 10th song. You know, we would never play it live. We would never think of playing it live. And there's always somebody somewhere that would come
Yeah.
up and say, hey, you guys ever play such and such, you know? And it's that song. It's like the
Right.
worst song in our minds that we've ever done. And we would never play live. And it's this person's favorite song,
Yeah.
you know? So you never know, you know, what people are going to like. You know, you can only hope that you do enough so that you can build some kind of fan base that likes you know,
Yeah.
at least something
And
that you're doing, you know?
Yeah, because
I
we never go negative because we don't want to, you know, and we
Right.
only have people on whose music we like because it's not. I can't be fake if I don't like something. I can't. You know what I
Right.
mean? So
Right.
it's not fair to the people watching. Just like you wouldn't
Mm-hmm.
play something that you wouldn't want to play on guitar.
Mm-hmm.
Your audience would see right through that as well. You
right.
know what I
And
mean?
and I've mentioned it on this show before that music is such an incredible power. Everybody in their life has a song or two that just means something that maybe you'll stop in your tracks and listen. I mean, to me, two of my absolute favorite songs are that I will listen to forever and ever is Stairway to Heaven and Lady Evil by Black Sabbath that Ronnie
Mm-hmm.
wrote. There is
Yeah.
just something about Lady Evil that
Yeah.
mystifies me when I you know there's a
Yeah.
lady who's feeds the darkness, it eats right from her hands. It's
Yeah.
such a story, and when it comes on, I will stop whatever I'm doing
Yeah.
and listen
Yeah.
to it and sing along to it and sing with Stairway to
Yeah.
Heaven. And I think everyone's
Yeah.
got a song that touches them here.
I'm sure they do, you know. You know, it's a
And they're
music
time
is
capsules.
a language, you know. It's a feeling, you know. You should feel
Yeah.
a certain way, you know. You put the music on and it makes you feel, you know, better, you know, because you're listening. So it's a very important thing. It's not just shouldn't take music lightly, you know.
Yeah, and it's very
Yeah.
interesting too how songs can change meaning throughout your life.
Mm-hmm.
Like to me,
Yeah.
"Oobla Dee Oobla Da" by the Beatles was always a fun song about, you know, my siblings. I'm the youngest of 5,
Yeah.
and there's a bunch of kids playing in the yard and
Yeah.
all that kind of thing. My brother died from the effects of PTSD, American
Mm-hmm.
Force veteran, and
Mm-hmm.
4 months after, or maybe 6 months after his death, I thought I was, you know, I was having a good week. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? And "Oobla Dee Oobla Da" came on, and when they said "Life goes on, brah," I just broke down. It
Yeah.
totally meant that song now means something totally different to me,
Yeah.
and I appreciate it even more.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so it's interesting how songs are organic and they
Mm-hmm.
grow and morph into
Yeah.
what you need from the song,
Yeah. Definitely.
you
Yeah.
know? And I was, you know, I think more should be studied about that, you know,
Yeah.
because they say the best thing for PTSD is dancing, moving your body.
No kidding. Hmm.
You know, so
It's,
obviously metal shows, everyone was releasing their
yeah.
PTSD left and
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I would try to explain to people when I was like, no, you don't understand when you go and you jam, you know, I'm jamming with my band, all this whatever ick just
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
goes. And you're in the audience and you're listening to
Yeah.
that. Like, I think the whole Black Sabbath Back to the Beginning show was like an affirmation for all of us, every single one, you, me, Fred, everybody who's ever listened to hard rock and gotten shit for it or played it.
Mm-hmm.
Here we are 45 years later.
Yeah.
We're okay.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And all the people that we look up to were with us the entire way, including Ronnie, because
Yeah.
maybe for a lot of us, the only time that we heard that we were loved is from the dude on stage telling us that.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
real.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it really is a brotherhood, you know, and I mean that when I say brotherhood, I also mean female or whatever. But
Yeah. It's
if
family.
you go to I know that no matter what country we've ever played in, the fans are the same. You know, they look the same,
Right.
they act the same, they're the same. So when you could be in Brazil and the fans are the same as they are, you know, in Germany or anywhere else, you know, that
Yeah.
they're the same. They're a family, you know, a brotherhood that that sticks together, that likes what they like, and
Right.
they live on that. So, that makes you feel really good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, so your new album on vinyl, that looks bad. At the nice album cover, by the way.
Yeah, that came out really nice. He's a great
Three-headed
artist.
bull. That's amazing.
Yeah. We let the dogs free. They're unchained. We've worked at. I said, Carl, we're gonna work these dogs. I mean, they're in the cage. They're chained up. They're, we got to let them free. They got to let them unchained. So now they're all free. So I don't know if that's a good thing or not,
Right. I know. I saw you guys open back in the '80s at the Aragon Ballroom in Chicago. I can't remember who you opened for. It might have been Journey. I don't quite remember, but you guys played the Aragon Ballroom, which is still there, believe it or not. So are you guys touring at all with this album?
Well, we, like I said, I think I said earlier, we turned down some dates. Well, it wouldn't have been for this album anyways, but we did turn down dates for this last summer.
Yeah.
Because we were previously working on a budget, or not a budget, but a schedule to get this album done.
Yeah.
We're hoping, we want to play. We all miss playing. Like I said, we don't have a manager. We don't have a booking agent. We kind of do everything ourselves by, if you had a festival going on and you called, and we've kind of made Carl the guy that to get the calls, because we don't want three people getting calls from three different people, so
Right.
you call and say, geez, I'm having this festival, what do I gotta give you guys to come over to, whatever country it is, to play our festival, and then we tell them, Carl comes back, you want to go do this thing, and they'll pay for the flights, the hotel, blah, blah, blah. 99.9% of the time we'll say yes, because we want to go there, do it. We want to play. Right. So yeah, we're looking forward to. We're hoping that the new album will spur some interest from promoters, to put us on some festivals, or even if they're not festivals, clubs are good too, because a lot of big clubs that are really cool. Because we want to play. We just, promote. I understand the way promoters think, and obviously it's the right way. They need to make money,
Right.
And if they don't feel that you can draw an X amount of people, then you're not going to be hired, no matter what the price is. And that's the right way to be. If I was a promoter, it would be the same thing. And so would you, if you feel that way. I'm just hoping that the new album can spur enough interest in promoters, fans, or whatever, to say, people telling promoters, hey, you got to get the Rods to play. Hey, you got to get the Rods. Why don't you call the Rods to play, blah, blah, blah. That we'll be able to go out and do some shows,
Yeah.
Probably won't be till next year now, but, because I think it's a good book ahead. But we're hoping we can come out and do some shows, And
you hear that, promoters, for next season? Book the Rods right now. Contact them. Book the Rods.
Get them out there.
Get them on your tour.
Call Carl.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'd love to see you on the road. It would be so awesome to see you guys.
Great. That would be nice. Yeah, we all miss it. Yeah, we all miss it.
All right, we got Wild Dogs Unchained by the Rods. David, thank you very much for your time. The stories were great. I was fascinated the entire time. It's always good to hear little tidbits that you've always wanted to know. And thank you for your contribution of
sometimes I get criticized for talking too much, but when
I
know there's I've got a million, so I could talk to you for hours, right?
We'll call you back for sure.
You're in the family now. You're in the family now, yeah.
Before the show, I'm like, I watched a couple interviews with David. I said he's going to be a great interview because he doesn't. Some people just lock up when they get on camera and they can't pontificate. But I'm like, no problem, man.
I know that there's people that want to hear it. I could go. I can just keep going. Sometimes it's like I can get the feeling, and I don't just go start talking to people. If somebody asks, I'll answer the question and I'll elaborate, and I won't go on. If that's all they want to know, that's fine, and I'll tell them, and then it's over with. But it's easy for me to talk. about these things because it makes me feel good, and to reminisce about a million different things.
And it's music history.
They really want to hear it, So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Well, David, thank you very much, sir. It's been a pleasure and an honor to meet you. And we will have you on again, and hopefully we'll be talking about the tour that you're going to be on in 26.
That's
that would
right.
be nice. Yeah.
All right, everyone, go out and buy some physical merchandise right now from the Rods. You will not be sorry. And everybody, we'll see you next time on the Metal Desk. Fred, love you, brother. David, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, David.
And horns up, everybody, and take care. See you next time on the Metal Desk.